Hi everybody, this is our daily agenda for Wednesday, May 19th. For today, our do now will be Quill. And today we're going to be looking at the types of poetry again, but we're going to be going into haikus. Today's evens, as always. Alright, so we're going to head into the origin of haiku for today's virtual field trip. Yesterday we went to the UK. Today we are going to Japan. So, whoops, wrong screen. So I'm just going to show you guys a little bit on what it kind of looks like, what we'll be talking about in our presentation. This will be available, of course, on our Google Classroom. So the origins of haikus, they come from Japan, ladies and gentlemen. Some of you guys might recognize the shape of the island country. So the history of the haiku, it starts in Japan. It really takes off the haiku during the 13th century. So just like the sonnet yesterday, the haiku started in that same time period, the 1300s, the 1200s, 1300s. The first form of a haiku was actually something called a renga. It was an oral poem, where we learned about oral history, with 100 verses. It was cut from something called the haiku and the hoku portion of the poem. So this renga had these two parts in it, a hoku and a haiku in it. And I believe it was the hoku that states the purpose. It puts those first kind of 3 lines out there, and the haiku kind of sets the tone. Well, over time, nobody really wants to write 100 verses. Imagine writing 100 sentences, 100 lines, ladies and gentlemen. And the thing about the renga, too, you needed 3 people to perform a renga. So there's 3 male authors right here just kind of sitting and composing a renga together. Nobody really kind of wanted to do that. So over time, the haiku became kind of shortened down, until you got all of the renga essentially in just 3 lines, which is kind of really cool. Some of the major themes, and we'll talk more about themes, but some of the major themes that we'll see from the haiku, it's an art form, ladies and gentlemen. It's born from Taoism, Buddhism, Shintoism, which is types of religions and lifestyles in Japan. These beliefs that one is with nature or one is more peaceful. This is that art form that was kind of born in the trifecta of the 3 and the renga. It's kind of a parallel that the renga used to take 3 people to perform, and haiku is really born from these 3 belief systems. So it's a nice little mix. Alright. Okay, so the Tokugawa period, Basho, and the haiku. So, by the 17th century, so 1603, so we went from 1200 to 1600, so that's 400 years. It took 400 years, and we had a master poet. His name was Matsu Basho, and he actually is the one who really popularized the haiku. Much like we had Shakespeare yesterday, today we have Basho. Basho really not just created the haiku, because we know the haiku has been around for a couple centuries, but he introduced it as a new style in Japan at the time. He actually would take pilgrimages, so here's an image where he's on a pilgrimage, and he's observing two males who are making wood print, not carvings, but wood print paper. So they're putting it down on paper like these wood prints. Pretty cool. But it's thanks to his travels and his pilgrimages. He actually went 100-mile walk through Japan, essentially, going through deep nature and Buddhist temples, and really being able to be just kind of one with nature. It's thanks to these travels and these pilgrimages that he was able to give this type of poetry to a larger Japanese society. So think about it like this, ladies and gentlemen. It's 100-mile walk. Some of you guys cry just doing the mile. So, he's walking 100 miles. He's coming across all sorts of people from the lowest classes to the highest classes in terms of wealth. So as he's walking, he's still reciting his poetry. He's establishing his poetry. And as he's doing it, people are passing it on. People like this. It only takes 3 lines to compose an entire feeling, a moment in time. It really became pretty popular. It was actually less restrictive. The haiku is less restrictive than other poems in Japan. So, for example, my goodness, I forgot what the other one was called. I think it was the I forgot what the other form of poetry was called. I apologize. But it was much like the sonnet, where it had those restrictive measures. The haiku really didn't have that other than the syllable count. So some other great masters of the haiku are Busan, Issa, Masaoka Shiki, Takahama Kiyoshi, and Kawa Higashi, and Hekigoto. I hope I said some of those correctly. I don't think I quite did, but I just wanted to present some of the other masters of this era, some of the other masters of haikus. So if you ever really do study haikus, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hear those names back and forth. All right. And then I just have a quick video where we are going to follow the path of Basho and see some of those temples. I have a couple other videos we're also going to be able to look at today. So what are the components of the haiku? We've talked about this. This should somewhat be in some of your notes. So the haiku, 5-7-5, super quick. The first verse has 5 syllables. The second verse has 7 syllables. The third verse has 5 syllables again. 5-7-5. So you do not need any rhyme scheme. You do not need any rhyme. You do not need any tense. Oh, you do need syllables, but it's excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. It's less restrictive than, say, a sonnet. All you have to adhere to is those 5-7-5 syllables. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, when we say the word rainbow, you can hear the syllables. So it goes syllables. Okay. So when we're saying the word, the way that we would naturally say it is the amount of syllables. Poet, poet, poem. So the word poem has 2 syllables. Poem. Okay. So that's just kind of how many syllables would be in that. So the first verse has 5 syllables. The first verse does not actually have 5 syllables. It has about 7. So that's how you guys can count syllables. So if you need help counting syllables, let me know. I will help you. So some of the common themes include nature, day-to-day life, and vivid snapshots of life. It's that moment that you can capture, kind of like you're on a camera lens. So those moments that you captured, that's what haiku's really focused on. What will be required for you, ladies and gentlemen, in your notes is to have an alliteration and a simile. So one verse has to have a comparison with like or as, and 2 words have to have the same sound at the beginning. It does not have to be the whole line has alliteration, but it can be 2 lines. So instead of old pond, it could be old open pond. And it has that alliteration, old open pond, because that O sound. So, or like and you are like a old pond. That would be an example of simile. And then we are, speaking of old pond, we're going to look further into old pond. We looked at old pond the other day. It's by Matsubashu. Again, the same kind of, I guess, veteran of poetry, kind of creator, popularizer of the haiku. I wanted you guys to listen to the Japanese of it, so I did pull up. We got to listen to some Middle English. We should listen to some Japanese as well. Furuyuki ya kawazu tobiko mu mizu no oto. We're going to listen to it, though, so you'll hear the Japanese. And then the direct translation of the Japanese is old pond, a frog jumps in, water sound. But when we think about it, ladies and gentlemen, when we translate from one language to another, things don't always translate not correctly, but they don't always translate the same. If you speak Spanish, if you speak Mandarin, if you speak Vietnamese, or any other language, you know, things don't always translate. So when we do have it translated, Old Pond actually translates to this and various other versions. So it just kind of depends. Then we'll get to hear it. And that's kind of going to wrap up our little day for haiku. It's a little bit shorter than sonnet. Sonnets are just heavy, ladies and gentlemen. Then what we are going to be moving into is a fun jam board. Oh no, where is our jam board? There it is. We are going to practice some of our haikus. So one of you is going to, well, all of you will actually be letting me know, what do you think is happening in the following image? So in this image, what's happening? What's going on? What do you notice is going on? And then the directions on a sticky note, mention what you notice in this image. The picture has been zoomed in for you to see on the next slide. It's a little bit bigger. I know it's grainy. I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. And then your directions for this activity. Using your observations from slide 1, Write a haiku expressing your thoughts on this image. So if the first thing you notice, ladies and gentlemen, in this image were the beautiful orange trees, okay, present those orange trees. If you see the houses, if you see the little river, if you see the clouds, if you see the mountains in the background, write a small haiku about it. And I'll give you guys some time in class to kind of write it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap up our day on haikus. As always, if you have any questions or just need some help, reach out to me, reach out to Ms. Royal, reach out to Ms. Reyes, and we'll help you guys out. Other than that, I will see you guys in class.